Hi, it's Mickey from Flipping Spain. Today, I want to ask you, should I buy this house? Now, what house, you say? We're going to take a look in just a second. This is what we call deal analysis or running the numbers. And it's very high level. Like, we're not trying to get into the nitty gritty. All the numbers don't have to be perfect. But what we want to do is say, hey, I saw this thing online. It looks pretty good. Let me just run it through my process to see if I should look a little further or if I should just write it off. This saves you a ton of time. So here we go. I found this house for sale in Calahorra. It's got 6 bedrooms and they've been split up into 3 different apartments. This is ideal. This is the kind of thing you look for, because it's already divided into separate rental units. It'd be so easy to just move in and rent out the other units, but it also raises a lot of questions. So this is how we figure out whether it's a good deal or not. Why did I pick this house in the first place? What I did was I searched things within my price range. I ordered it by the biggest, most square footage, and this was one of them. So for $98,000, I get 6 bedrooms, and it says that it's a house with 3 independent apartments. So I'm not dealing with other tenants, although they are connected on either side because it's a townhouse style. But I've already got it divided into 2 rental units and 1 for myself. So it sounds perfect. Now we'll look through the listing to just kind of see if there are any things we need to pay attention to. So the first thing we can do is compare it with other things around it. So we don't really know about pricing too much, but we can sort of zoom in on the area. It's in this older part of town down here. So our property is sitting right here in this little area. Now, first thing I notice is that it's the most expensive thing in this little section, and by a lot. So what can you get for $7,600? Well, there's no interior pictures, so that's probably a piece of crap. And it's 2 bedrooms, and it's way, way smaller. What can you get for $13,000? 4 bedrooms, 2nd floor without a lift. So 2nd floor apartment, no elevator, and it looks like that. So we could really drill down on price per square foot and see if that evens out. But it's just something to be aware of, because that makes me think, okay, well, what's going on in this neighborhood? Are people not buying here? Are people selling and moving out? Is there a lot going on? Those are things I won't be able to answer right now, but it's just a good starting point. But so far, I'm not going to rule it out, because maybe I get to live here and then I can flip all these cheap properties, right? Right. Now, one of the tricky things about Idealista and property listing sites in Spain is that you don't have sold properties. Like you can look up on Zillow where you can see what things have sold for. So all I can see is what things are being listed for, and that only tells me half the story. But that's where I can ask an agent for help if I really decide that I'm interested in this. Then we can look at the photos. That's always fun. But like we said in the property research video, you're looking for clues. So this to me says that they've already converted their attic space, which is just something that would have been potential to do if they hadn't. It doesn't look poorly maintained. This looks a little rough. And this staircase is interesting. So it makes me wonder, because there's no floor plan, if the apartments are truly separated, or if there are rooms off this central staircase and they're kind of calling it apartments. Well, that does look promising with that big door there. So it looks like it's being used as a business. Definitely an art studio here. Functional kitchen. Oh, that must be one of the balconies. There's heating. Yay. All right, is that the only bedroom they're going to show us? Okay, so that's the little balcony. I'm wondering then if this is an outdoor terrace or if this is part of the next building. So that would be a good question to ask. And there's the front. It does have bars on the windows, but they're very decorative, which I like. And we can zoom in maybe. I mean, it doesn't look too bad. It looks like it's been maintained. Dated, but functional. That's okay. Another big kitchen with another little balcony off of it. That's our 3rd kitchen, so it is 3 true apartments. Another shower. So all in all, that doesn't look too bad. I'm pretty happy with that. I didn't really see any big warning signs. This room looks like it has a little bit of water damage up above the window maybe, but that's on an exterior wall, so I say it could be easy. It could also be the roof or all of the stucco. So it could be an expensive problem. One of the things we'll have to dig into if we move forward on this property. But so far, I'm happy. So this passes test number 1. It looks like a decent property. So let's take it to the next level and think about what kind of strategies can we use for this? Do we want to rehab it? Do we want to rent it? How do we figure that out? So again, we're going to do some high-level research. We're going to look at rentals because the property is in pretty good shape, so it's not going to be a flip. The first thing I'm going to do is look at all the rentals in Kalahora, all 4 of them. There's not a lot of rentals, which is kind of interesting. When we go back to looking at property for sale, especially if we zoom out, there's a ton more for sale than there is for rent. Now, that could be a good thing because that means that there isn't hardly anything to rent, and so it's very competitive, which is good for me as a landlord. Could also mean that Idealista is just not where people advertise their rentals, and that's something I'll have to figure out. It could also mean that people are moving away or this is not a great place to invest. So these are things we'll think about. And later we can compare a property in Kalahora with a property in Logroño and see how those numbers look different. But for right now, we're just going to look at Kalahora since that's probably where I'll be living. So we've only got 4 rentals. Let's see what we've got. $500 gets you a 1-bedroom. It's quite modern. $620 gets you a studio, which is not quite as modern, has a little terrace. Kind of looks like, a lot of times they say studio, but it really looks like a 1-bedroom. Oh, but that is 4th floor, with an elevator. Okay, that's something you have to pay attention to, is with and without elevator, because there are a lot of things that are above the 3rd floor without an elevator, and that's a deal breaker for me because I just don't think it's good for resale. It's also not great for renters. So this one doesn't have an elevator, but it's only the 2nd floor. It's a 3-bedroom apartment for €700 a month. Very updated, well, partly updated. And then $750 gets you something without photos. So it kind of shows us there's not a whole lot of difference between a small apartment and a big apartment. You can also look at Facebook Marketplace just in case there are some things. There are not very many things, but this is different. Oh, these are rooms for rent per night. Oh, that's what we didn't look at. So the great thing about Idealista is that you can look at rentals. You can also look at shared spaces. So let's flick over. This gives us a few more options. There are a lot more rooms being rented than full apartments. So that's interesting too. And they sort of seem to range between $250, can't see what this one is. Yeah, and just over $300. So again, not a big range in price. And it looks like the more modernized ones are the slightly more expensive ones. Okay, well that's pretty clear cut. Oh, that's the kind of picture you want to put on your rental. Great marketing. But these are things that can give you an advantage as an investor, is just putting better pictures and better information on your listing can make you more competitive. And my goal is always to be the best value for money. So nicer than most things, but cheaper than most things. That's my target. Also a good idea just to look on Airbnb just to get a feel for what's out there. Not a ton, but there are a few things. These are full apartments, so I'm just going to switch to rooms just to see. Oh my gosh, that's interesting. So there's only 1 room. So what I've gathered just from this is that long-term rentals, there are more rooms for rent than whole apartments at this point in time. And with Airbnb, there are more apartments than room rentals. So we'll factor that in when we start looking at our numbers. So the last thing we want to think about is who is going to rent these rooms. Are they regular people, in which case we want to know what industries are in Kalahora, what types of workers are looking for places to live. Do people live with roommates? Do they live with family? Do they want their own place? Do they want to share? I know that I can rent to other auxiliaires, which is great, but there are 2 caminos that go through town, which we'll talk about in a bit, but that might mean that there are tourists coming through who want short-term accommodation as well. So these are all the questions that we need to ask, but now we're going to look at our spreadsheet. And I will warn you now, spreadsheets don't sound like fun, but I really nerd out with this stuff. So this is a spreadsheet that I've built over time, and it will allow us to compare several properties next to each other. So first of all, we're just going to look at the townhouse. We know the purchase price, $98,000, and we're paying cash for that, which is important. So that means We won't have anything to put into the mortgage box. Now, this is where we start finding out some things that we don't actually know. Utilities, I'm just kind of guessing based on I've seen rooms for rent and they're charging people between $30 and $50 a month for extra utilities like Wi-Fi and electricity and stuff. So I'm going to estimate the other 2 apartments are going to be paid for by the tenants unless I'm Airbnb-ing them. So this is just a guesstimate for my apartment. Maybe I get one Wi-Fi for the whole building, but I'm going to overestimate what I think it'll be per month because that's always safer. So just in case you're wondering, these little boxes in gray is where I input things. It just reminds me whether I need to put an annual figure or a monthly figure in, and then the white boxes calculate themselves automatically. So I think because it's a townhouse, I don't think there's a community fee because there's no one else in the building that you're sharing it with. That may not be true. There may be something with the neighbors, but we won't worry about that right now. Again, we're doing very high level look at this. If the numbers don't look good at this high level, then we won't go any further and dig into the details. Taxes, again, I think I'm overestimating based on the research I've done, but I'm just going to assume 2%. That's what I assume in the US, and that's an annual figure, so that's a monthly amount, $163. Insurance, I have absolutely no idea. We could put a number in, let's say we think it's going to be $50 a month, just so we have something in there. Now, maintenance reserves, this is not money that anybody else is going to ask me for. If I was getting a loan, they might want to see that I had a certain amount of money set aside. 0.5% is pretty low. So what that means is that 0.5% of the total value of the property, so $100,000, just under $5,000, that comes to per year that you're setting aside for ongoing maintenance costs. Especially when you own the whole building. You know, you've got to think about the roof, you got to think about the exterior stucco. I don't know what condition the plumbing or the electrical is in. And of course, we adjust for age and condition, and this house is over 100 years old. And I don't know how well it's been maintained. So this is probably low. And again, you know, this is money that could go on a credit card or something, but it's good practice to set aside some money for maintenance reserve. So we're going to leave it in our calculation because if the calculation doesn't work with these numbers in it, then it's something we have to think about. Property management, I'm going to leave out because I'm going to assume that I'm living in the property and I'm managing it. Now, if I was planning on moving away and I wanted to leave that in someone's hands, then I probably should start by putting in property management just so I know that it works with these numbers. But for our purposes here, again, we're just going to keep it simple. So $771.67 is what this building is going to cost me per month, even when I own it outright. Now, this section is associated with short-term rentals. That is one of the strategies that we might use. So I am going to put some things in here. This is an additional $100 on top of this because if I have Airbnb, then I'm not charging people for electricity. Supplies, you know, that's things like toilet paper and cleaning supplies. This calculates itself automatically based on Airbnb's fees, based on the rent that might be coming in. Legal, I don't know if I'll need that. Cleaning, I'm just going to do my cleaning myself for now. So this is what it costs me extra if I'm Airbnb. So this is where we start figuring things out. So the way I've set this up is I can put in the amount I would do as a furnished short-term rental, like an Airbnb, or a long-term rental. And then I also can do a combination of the two. Now to save us some time, I already went and looked at all the different options. So I've got 3 apartments in the townhome. I'm going to live in one, so I'm taking that out. Then if I just do a long-term, that's what the LT is, long-term rental, we figured about $600 a month for each one, so that's $1,200 altogether. And then I'm calculating the vacancy rate here, and the vacancy rate is how much I think it will be empty. I think it'll be empty half a month a year. So I have to take away a little bit because I'm not going to get rent for the full 12 months. Then I also looked at what I could do if I did the whole unit short term. So we're going to get a little bit more. This is probably less than I could charge, but again, I want to be conservative. So I'm going to bump that up to $900 a month for each apartment, but I'm going to give it a really big vacancy rate because as we saw when we were looking through Airbnb, those places are not booked up. So that takes me down to $900 a month. So already this is coming out. This is more work, more expenses, and I'm making less money. So I already know I probably don't want to do that. Now, if I break it into rooms, I could rent each room for about $280, given the condition. And, you know, maybe if I made it a little fancier, I could bump it up to $300. But 2 rooms at $300 or $280 is very comparable to just renting the whole apartment out. Now, the benefit to that is that if I have two different leases with two different tenants and one moves out, I'm still getting rent on that apartment because there's someone still living there. So that's something to think about. And of course, those are pretty comparable in price. Now, oh, and let me just say, I could also rent out the extra room in my apartment. Then that makes that a little bit better, but then I have to share. Maybe I don't want to do that. And then if we look at short term, and I'm just doing, what did I do? I did $80 a night, which is pretty reasonable for the town, but I did 30 nights a month. So full time, this is what it would make me. But again, I don't think it's going to be full all the time, so I've taken half off. Still looks good. And I kind of calculated over here that I only have to do this for 8 nights a month in order to match renting the whole apartment out. Now again, that's more work, but if I can beat 8 nights a month, that's pretty good. What this has all sort of shown me is I think for this, because I have 3 separate units, is to combine the two, is to have me in one, to rent one apartment out long term, because this $600 is going to be awfully close to covering my entire cost. So even if I spend $200 of my own money every month, I'm paying $200 a month to live in my own apartment and own my home. So that's pretty good. But then if I rent the other apartment out at short-term rates, then all of a sudden now I'm looking at $1,800 a month, which is a lot better than $1,140 and almost $22,000 a year versus $14,000 a year. So I like this combination. Now that we've sort of looked at this, those numbers can go in here. So this is what we think our short-term rental would be. This is $80 a night times 15 days times 2 because there's 2 apartments. And that minus all my expenses gives me that. If I just do the 2 apartments at $600 each, then I've got that, put the vacancy in, of course, and then we're making $400 a month. Still pretty good. And then if we do a combo, we're coming out at $1,000 a month. So all of these options are viable. It kind of just depends how much work I want to do and what my tenant base is. Who are the people that are available to rent? And then I've done some calculations down here just to see what my return would be. So if I only spend $98,000, just the purchase price, which is not really true because there's going to be expenses on top of that, and then probably be some minor repairs. So maybe let's bump that up a little bit. Let's add an extra $15,000 on there. Let's make it $115,000. And actually for short-term rentals, I'm going to add another, because I'm going to have to buy furniture and probably do some decorating. So let's say we do that on the cheap and we are in it for $120,000. Okay. And then let's bump that up to $115,000. And then the combo, let's say that's pretty similar. Okay. So long-term rental, I'm only getting 4% return on my cash. I'm still making money every month and I own my own home, so that's fine. But I'm not really expecting the property to go up in value very quickly, if at all. So that's, if I was being super picky about investing, I might say, well, I want to make more money on my investment. So this isn't a good strategy. But this meets so many other goals for me that the 4% is just a bonus. However, if we do this combo, then all of a sudden I'm making 11%. And you're never going to get that putting your money in the bank. So that makes it a lot more worth it. So that's how this works. It's just putting the hard, cold numbers in, and we're overestimating, and then you can do things like, say the house is in perfect condition and I don't need to spend any more money. Well, we'll take that out, and all of a sudden my returns go up and my monthly revenue goes up. So in the next video, we'll plug in the numbers for another property and then we'll be able to compare them side by side. I hope you're all nerding out about this as much as I do. So I think this is looking pretty good. It'll be worth digging into further. The other thing that this type of research does for me is it shows me where my gaps in my knowledge are. So, for example, I don't know how much insurance costs in Spain. I don't know when I have a community fee or I don't. I'm not sure where people are listing or finding local rentals and who are my target renters. So those are all things I can do more research on that this has helped me figure out. But at the end of the day, I like it. There are a few more questions we can answer with some remote research, and we'll talk more about those in my next video, which is going to be deal analysis on the second property, and then we'll be able to compare the two and decide which one is our number one choice. All right, stay tuned, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.